It's no secret that I like diesel locomotives, so I thought today we'll have a look at how does a diesel locomotive work? Where does it get its power from? How does it propel itself along the track? And I thought some of you might be interested in this. Have a couple of diagrams. Going to really simplify it. We'll just have a look at in very simple terms as how a diesel locomotive actually operates. Why are they so powerful? Why are they so fuel efficient? Why were diesel locomotives used for so long? So stick with me, we'll have a look at it. I'm going to break it down into small parts and I'm going to really simplify it, and hopefully by the end of the video you'll have a better understanding of how these work. I thought people new to railways might be interested in this and curious. Okay, so let's have a look. So most people are probably familiar with what a diesel engine is. It's in road vehicles and cars, the cars that we drive. But the common misconception is that in a diesel locomotive, the locomotive engine is directly powering the wheels of the train. And that's not true. So a diesel locomotive engine, that's producing mechanical power. Now, mechanical power is not the most efficient and fuel efficient way of powering a train. If a diesel locomotive like this class 47 was to try and power all the wheels on this locomotive, and there's 12 of them and 6 axles, and pull a train along the line, it would need all these fuel tankers carrying fuel for the whole journey. So obviously that's not going to work. Yes, in a road vehicle, the engine is directly linked to the transmission system, and from there it powers the road vehicle's wheels. But in a diesel locomotive, that's not how it works, because it is not the most fuel efficient system. And of course we're looking for power. Some of the trains these locomotives are going to be pulling, they could be very long. Diesel locomotives in America can be a couple of miles long. So how do we do it? How do we change that mechanical energy into another form of energy that's going to make this locomotive very powerful and fuel efficient? Let's have a look. So here's a very nice British Rail Class 37. So what's it got inside? What has the real locomotive like this got inside? It has a diesel engine, obviously, and for the rest of the video we're going to call that the prime mover. That is the correct term for the diesel engine side. It's called a prime mover, and it's called that because it is the first initial stage in powering this locomotive. Now we're going to have a little look at a diagram here. So here is our prime mover that would be in this engine, and obviously the fuel is burnt inside the engine. That is chemical energy. So fuel gets burnt in the cylinders just like it would be in a normal road vehicle. So the engine starts running, there's a drive shaft that comes out of it, and it goes into what's either known as an alternator or an electric generator. So now we've changed it. We've changed the source of energy from mechanical energy to electrical energy. And electrical energy is the most efficient way of producing energy. The electrical energy sometimes, not in all cases, goes through a process where they rectify it. Depending on the builder of the locomotive, the electrical energy produced might be what they call alternating current. Could also be direct current. So they put it through a rectifier, and that changes it from AC to DC or from DC to AC. You don't need to concentrate on that. All you need to know is the diesel engine is now producing electricity. The electricity goes down to an inverter. Now basically you don't really need to know what an inverter does, but it kind of splits the electricity up. Okay, that's the way we'll have a look at this. The electricity then goes down to what they call traction motors. Now the traction motors are on every single wheel of the locomotive. Every single one of them. So 6 on this side and 6 on the other. So we're actually powering every single wheel on the locomotive. So the electricity coming down to each motor, and on the traction motor, the energy is now changed to mechanical energy, powering each individual wheel. Obviously there's ancillary systems for the locomotive, but that's basically how it works. And this is the most numerous kind of diesel locomotive in the world. So its correct term is a diesel electric. So as I say, there are independent systems on a locomotive, and they would be similar to a road vehicle. So you would have the likes of the cooling system, electrical systems for lights, for a computer, and I'll talk about that in a second. Obviously, lubricating oil systems, the brake system. These are all independent systems. You also have things like an air intake system. And what an air intake system is used for on a diesel locomotive is, we've now got great power coming out of this locomotive because a diesel engine is powering an electric generator, which is generating electricity for traction motors that are on the outside of each of these wheels, and a gear system then operates them, driving the locomotive. But maybe we want to make this locomotive even more powerful than it can be. So what do they do? Well, with an air intake system, and you'll get this on road vehicles as well, they stick a turbocharger on the back of the diesel locomotive. And you might say, well, I've heard of the term turbocharger, but what, I know it makes things powerful, but what's it exactly doing? So let's make it simple. All a turbocharger is doing is putting highly compressed air into the cylinders for ignition. So you got oxygen in a highly concentrated state going into each cylinder, and that obviously is going to create a very powerful combustion within the cylinder. And as we all know, when it comes to successful combustion, you need 3 things. You need fuel, obviously. We've got our diesel fuel. We've got the heat, which would be obviously some kind of a glow plug system that you would have either in a road vehicle. And then we have oxygen. So if oxygen is going in a very condensed, highly charged state into the cylinder, you're going to get very good combustion. And that is going to make this diesel locomotive very, very powerful. So, is that the only kind of diesel locomotive there is? Well, it's not. So here we have 4 locomotives, and obviously they look different. But the way they are powered, more importantly, is completely different. So we've looked at the diesel electric, and we know now that a diesel electric, the way it works, it changes chemical energy into mechanical energy, into electrical energy, the most efficient energy, back into mechanical energy to power all the wheels on the locomotive. But when you look at that and you kind of study it, you're saying, we've got a diesel engine, we've got a generator, we've got traction motors and all the ancillary equipment. That's going to make this locomotive very heavy. So that's going to cause a problem. It's powerful. It can pull very long trains, very heavy trains, but the weight is an issue. And the average diesel locomotive, they're around 100 tons. So is it going to be able to travel on every part of the network where there might be weight restrictions? Well, the answer is obviously no. So these three locomotives, they wouldn't be the most numerous type on the railway, but they are still used and have been used. So with all that extra weight we have in a diesel electric, and you've got a line where you've got bridges and viaducts that have weight restrictions, how do you get around it? Well, in this case, this locomotive here, this is known as a diesel hydraulic. So instead of having, it still has the diesel engine, but instead of having the electric generator, it has a hydraulic system that powers the motors on the wheel. It makes it much lighter. Obviously not as powerful because it's not using the electrical energy. And you can see here on the top of the roof, there's two sets of radiator fan grills. That's because in this diesel type, to get around the power problem, they've made the locomotive lighter, yes, but we don't have the power. So what did we do? We put two engines. So that is another type, diesel hydraulic, used a lot in Europe as well. Another type of locomotive that doesn't use electricity is the diesel mechanical. Now, this is a shunter, and shunters were used extensively right through the end of the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and you'll still even get a few shunters being operated today on railways. So obviously, in this case, it only needs to be a small locomotive. It doesn't need to be a big locomotive like this Class 52. So obviously we could put a diesel engine in it, a smaller diesel engine, but we obviously not going to be able to put an electric generator in it because we don't have the room. So in this case, the diesel engine through a mechanical system is powering the wheels. But that's okay, because this isn't going to be pulling big long freight trains. It's not going to be pulling heavy trains, long trains. It's just going to be moving wagons around in a yard area. So that's okay. So that's another type, diesel mechanical. Now, the last type of diesel locomotive, this is a bit of a, I suppose you could call it a bit of the exception to the rule. This locomotive is known as an electro diesel. So you're going, well, we've already talked about a diesel electric. So what is an electro diesel? Well, electro diesels primarily work off electricity. That is their primary source of power, and how they do it is on the railway, you have your track there, and then you'll see it sometimes on some systems, railway systems, there's a third rail that actually carries very high current. So this locomotive picks up electricity from a third rail. So you're saying to yourself, okay, so it's really an electric locomotive. Yes, it is, but no, it isn't. So what happens if this locomotive leaves the main line where the third rail is and it goes into the yard area or another part of the network where there isn't the third rail? So this locomotive can switch over from electric system to a smaller diesel engine to power it. So it's like a hybrid really. You can use two systems to power the locomotive, either electricity from a third rail or a smaller diesel engine for short running. And those are the other types of locomotive you can have. Now, I mentioned earlier on there was a computer system used on the locomotive, and there is. So to keep the diesel engine, the generator, the traction motors, and all the equipment on the train running exactly in sync, they use a computer system, and it monitors everything and keeps everything running in sync with each other, and that's really important. And the driver has indicators to let them know when something is not running in sync. Just something I wanted to mention, just like the old steam engines, obviously these locomotives are incredibly powerful, and they have what is known as great traction, which means great grip on the track. But what happens if there's snow and ice? What happens if there's very heavy rain and the rails are all wet? How does it maintain that grip and traction on the track? Well, they use the same system that they did on steam locomotives, and there's a sanding system. So they literally send sand down onto the wheel and onto the rail, excuse me, and it's sent down at high pressure on. So the sand actually helps with the grip and maintains the traction that they need. So I hope this video has been of some use to you out there. Maybe those that like trains, but wanted a bit more information on how a diesel locomotive actually works. And you can see in this picture here the size of that engine alone. It's about the length of a family car. So these are big units, and so that is really how they operate. They change that chemical energy into mechanical energy into electricity, and the electricity is the most efficient form of energy that you can have. Then it's transferred down to the traction motors on the bogies and powers the wheels. So that last step is the electrical energy changing back into mechanical energy, and you have every wheel on the locomotive maintaining traction, and that's why they are so powerful. So I hope, as I said, I hope you have enjoyed the video, and we'll try and come up with another video as soon as we can. If you enjoyed this, if it was useful, give it an old thumbs up, and until the next one, everyone take care and look after yourselves.